sprawling, neon-lit streets of New Chicago, nobody took themselves too seriously. The city's skyline was cluttered with shimmering holograms, advertising everything from mood-enhancing beverages to genetically engineered pets that told knock-knock jokes. Earth's humor was as eclectic as its cuisine, and both had gained a certain notoriety in the wider galactic community. Jackson Jack Carter was a small-time comedian, known for his offbeat routines and knack for making even the sternest cyborg crack a smile. He performed at dive bars and interplanetary comedy clubs, his biggest claim to fame being a viral clip where he impersonated an overly polite Brathakian customs officer. But beyond the laughs, Jack was just a regular guy, unremarkable, untrained, and with zero combat experience. So when the annual Zolaran Arena tournament opened its registrations to all known species, no one expected Jack, of all people, to sign up. The arena was legendary, hosting battles that drew billions of viewers across the galaxy. Each year, the fiercest warriors from every corner of known space competed for glory, fame, and an absurdly large payout. The reigning champions were superhuman, in every sense of the word, genetically enhanced mercenaries, psychic overlords, and bipedal war machines. And now, a human comedian from Earth was about to join their ranks, though not for the reasons anyone might expect. It started, like many of Jack's life decisions, with a late-night comedy binge. He and a few friends were crammed into a small apartment, laughing over reruns of old interstellar stand-up specials. As they watched, an ad interrupted the show. A booming voice announced, "The Zolaran Arena Tournament, now open to all life forms. Prove your worth. Face the galaxy's finest." On-screen, hulking gladiators exchanged blows, their movements both graceful and devastating. "Yeah, right," one of Jack's friends snorted. "Like anyone from Earth could survive that." "Imagine someone like Jack in there," another friend teased. "The human tornado, charging in with nothing but a mic stand and bad puns." Jack laughed along with them, but a spark of mischief lit in his mind. "What if I actually signed up?" he said, half joking. The room went silent. His friends exchanged skeptical looks. "Come on, Jack, that's suicide." "Maybe," Jack replied, a grin spreading across his face. "But think about the material I'd get. I fought a Brathakian gladiator and all I got was this lousy space flu." Comedy gold. It didn't take much convincing. Half an hour later, he was sitting at his old desk filling out the registration form on a gaudy holographic interface. Most contestants uploaded training records, combat stats, and tactical resumes. Jack, on the other hand, typed in a deliberately over-the-top description: Jackson Carter, aka the Human Tornado, 1 punch, 1 kill, the Earth's deadliest comedian. A week later, to his astonishment, he received a reply: "Accepted. Your first match is in 10 days. At first, Jack thought it had to be a mistake. Surely someone on the arena's administration team would review his credentials and pull the plug. But no follow-up came. The message was clear. His application had been processed and he was officially a competitor. The reactions from his friends were a mix of disbelief and panic. "Jack, what are you going to do?" one asked. "These aren't friendly sparring matches, they're blood sports." "Relax," Jack said, though his own nerves were starting to fray. "It's probably all for show. Like professional wrestling. Just a bunch of posturing and choreography." But as the days ticked down, Jack started seeing the promo material. Highlights of past tournaments flickered on every screen in New Chicago. A Brathakian pulverizing a metallic warrior with one swing of its spiked club, an Ulvax spinning through the air in a blur of steel and scales, a Deharthan Psy-warrior summoning a storm of glowing shards. Jack watched with a growing pit in his stomach. This isn't wrestling, he realized. This is real. Still, the pressure to back out was outweighed by his curiosity and his ego. Every new promo carried his face, his corny tagline, his exaggerated moniker. "The Human Tornado," the announcer sneered in sarcastic tones. 1 punch, 1 kill. Jack's inbox flooded with messages, half of them supportive and the other half pure mockery. He wasn't just a competitor anymore. He was a galactic meme. When the day of the match arrived, Jack found himself in a massive spaceport, being shuttled to the Zolaran arena. The journey took him to a distant system, to a world whose surface glittered like a diamond under the light of 3 suns. The arena itself loomed like a fortress, a labyrinth of steel and light carved into a towering peak. Jack's heart pounded as the transport ship docked. He couldn't stop thinking about the crowds, the cameras, the opponents who could snap.
Such a game.
He was the human joke, the underdog nobody expected to survive even a single round. But deep down, behind the fear and doubt, Jack felt something else stirring. This was ridiculous, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But it was also his chance to prove that sometimes the biggest punchlines came from the unlikeliest of setups. The Zolaran arena was nothing like Jack had imagined. Standing in the shadow of its colossal walls, he felt more like an ant than a would-be gladiator. The arena itself was a marvel of advanced engineering and brutal design, an immense, open battlefield lined with shifting walls, automated traps and platforms that rose and fell at unpredictable intervals. The environment was as much an opponent as the combatants themselves. Jack had barely set foot in the preparation chamber before an attendant shoved a set of ill-fitting armor into his arms. The pieces clattered noisily as he fumbled to put them on. The chest plate was too snug, the helmet too loose. He felt like a kid trying on a costume that didn't fit, which, in a way, he was. When the announcer's voice boomed through the preparation chamber, Jack jumped. "Competitors, to your marks, the first match begins now." Jack shuffled out into the glaring sunlight of the arena, his legs stiff from both the awkward armor and the growing fear in his gut. As he stepped onto the battlefield, the roar of the crowd hit him like a physical force. Thousands, no, millions of beings were watching, both in the stands and through the galaxy-wide broadcast. He was pretty sure most of them were laughing. Across from him, his first opponent appeared. A Quarith gladiator, towering and insect-like, its multiple limbs gleaming in the harsh light. Its carapace looked harder than steel, and its movements were smooth, calculated. Jack suddenly remembered seeing a Quarith fighter on one of the arena highlight reels, how it had bisected an Ulvax warrior with one swipe of its serrated limb. This was the end of the line, he thought. A big, embarrassing, bug-shaped end. "Great," he muttered to himself. "I'm about to be squashed on live holocast." The announcer's voice rang out again. The human tornado facing the unyielding claw of Quarith, a match for the ages, or at least for comedy hour. Laughter rippled through the crowd, a sound that only made Jack's hands tremble more. He tried to put on a brave face, tried to summon some of the bravado he'd seen in action hollows. But all he managed was a lopsided grin under his oversized helmet. The starting gong sounded, and the Quarith charged. Jack's first instinct was to run, and he did, straight backward. The arena floor was uneven, littered with debris and pits that opened without warning. As Jack stumbled away, the Quarith swung one of its deadly limbs in a horizontal slash. Jack tripped over something metallic and fell flat on his back. He closed his eyes, bracing for the end. The Quarith's strike missed, slicing cleanly through, a loose support beam instead. The beam groaned and collapsed, setting off a chain reaction. Overhead machinery that had once been part of the shifting arena structure toppled and slammed into the ground. The Quarith, caught mid-lunge, was pinned under the weight of the falling debris. Jack opened his eyes. He blinked, confused. The Quarith was down, writhing but unable to free itself. The crowd went silent for half a second before erupting, into cheers and laughter. The announcer's voice cracked with disbelief. "The human tornado, wins?" Still on the ground, Jack raised his hand weakly in a mock victory wave. He scrambled to his feet, his legs like jelly, and stumbled back toward the exit gate. He could still hear the laughter, but it didn't sound cruel anymore. It sounded impressed. For the first time, the joke wasn't on him. It was about him. Back in the preparation chamber, Jack sat down hard on a bench, helmet askew, sweat dripping down his face. He barely noticed the attendants congratulating him or the holocams hovering around for a post-match interview. His mind was spinning. He knew the truth. It had been pure dumb luck. Nothing about his movements had been intentional, and he certainly hadn't beaten the Quarath. The arena had done that for him. Still, as he looked at the crowd through the preparation chamber's observation window, he saw signs and banners, with his hastily concocted nickname, the Human Tornado, waving high. He couldn't help but smile. Maybe I'm not dead yet, Jack muttered to himself. Maybe, just maybe, I can keep this joke going a little longer. Tasks. Jack's second fight was announced with all the pomp of a championship title match. Overnight, he had gone from unknown human nobody to a galactic curiosity. His first victory had been broadcast and replayed 1,000,000 times. Commentators dissected his every stumble, every flailing move, treating them like calculated strategies. The phrase tornado style started trending on galactic networks. Backstage, Jack wasn't feeling so trendy. He sat in his cramped preparation room, staring at the battered armor he'd won in the last match. His hands wouldn't stop shaking, and his heart thudded like it was trying to escape his chest. He kept replaying the fight in his head. Not just the fight, but the fact that he'd lived, that he'd been cheered. The door hissed open, and one of the arena attendants stepped in, holding a tablet. The Quarath's match stats flickered on screen, and then they were replaced by Jack's next opponent, an Olvax duelist. The image displayed a lithe, scaled alien with long knife-like claws and an unsettling grin. Where the Quarath had been brute strength, the Olvax was speed incarnate. Jack's stomach turned as he read the stats. This fighter's win record was impeccable, their movements known for precision and lethality. The tablet showed replays of the Olvax darting through opponents' defenses like a shadow, ending fights in seconds. Great, Jack muttered. I get the cheetah after the tank. The attendant gave him a pitying smile, clearly expecting this fight to end Jack's improbable streak. You're up in 10, she said before exiting. 10 minutes. 10 minutes, until he faced the kind of opponent that wasn't going to trip over their own feet. He could hear the crowd through the walls chanting Human Tornado louder and louder. The audience, it seemed, was already in love with the idea of him, even if they were mostly laughing at his expense. Jack took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. All right, he muttered to himself. If I'm going to do this, I might as well go out with a bang. When he entered the arena this time, the crowd was deafening. Flags with crude drawings of his face waved from every corner of the stands. Someone had even made a holographic rendition of his flailing fall from the first match, and it played on loop above one section. Jack forced a grin, hoping his terror didn't show. The Olvax was already on the field, crouched low, watching him with unblinking eyes. Jack felt like a piece of meat in front of a predator. He resisted the urge to make a joke about being a chew toy. The announcer's voice rang out. The Human Tornado faces the blade of Olvax. Can the underdog pull off another miracle, or will this be the end of his meteoric rise? As soon as the gong sounded, the Olvax launched into motion. It moved so fast Jack barely saw it coming. He swung wildly, trying to defend himself, but the Olvax was already behind him, slicing at his armor with surgical precision. Jack yelped and stumbled, spinning to face his opponent. The crowd roared, urging him to fight back. "Tornado! Tornado!" they chanted. Jack tried to focus, but the Olvax was a blur. Every time he raised his weapon, a clumsy, heavy baton, the Olvax darted around it, striking him with light, quick hits that chipped away at his defenses. This wasn't a fight. This was a performance art piece about humiliation. Out of pure instinct, Jack started talking. "So what? Is this your cardio routine?" he said, panting. "Because I gotta say, you're making me feel a little lazy. Over here." The Olvax hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, but it was enough. Jack saw the opening, swung his baton, and missed entirely. He stumbled again, this time tripping over his own feet. The Olvax lunged, anticipating a perfect finishing strike, but in that moment, the shifting arena floor betrayed it. A trap panel opened underneath, forcing the Olvax to adjust mid-attack. The timing was just off enough that Jack's flailing. Batten caught it in the shoulder. The Olvac skidded back stunned, not seriously hurt but clearly taken off guard. Jack, for his part, looked as surprised as everyone else. He pressed his advantage, charging with all the grace of a drunken space tourist. The Olvacs recovered quickly, darting forward again, but Jack managed to parry one strike, by accident really, as he was still trying to regain his footing. His baton connected with the Olvac's claws, sending sparks flying. And then, in a move that would go down in the annals of improbable sports history, Jack did what he did best. He improvised. He pretended to trip again, throwing himself forward, at an awkward angle. The Olvac, thrown off by the erratic motion, misjudged its counterattack. It slipped just slightly, and Jack's desperate swing struck it across the chest. The impact wasn't enough to wound, but it was enough to unbalance. The Olvac hit the ground. For a moment, the crowd was silent. Then they erupted into cheers. Jack stood there, baton in hand, breathing heavily. He couldn't believe it. He'd won. Again. His mouth moved before his brain caught up. Looks like I'm still standing? Who saw that coming? The audience howled with laughter, loving every second of the spectacle. Back in the locker room, Jack peeled off his dented armor and stared at his reflection. He was shaking, but not just from fear anymore. Somehow, some way, he had done it again. He had survived. And as much as he hated to admit it, he was starting to believe in the legend people were making him out to be. By the time Jack reached the finals, he had become a phenomenon. Across the galaxy, tornado fever swept through every corner of civilization. Children on distant colonies wore knockoff helmets and swung broomsticks, pretending to be the heroic human who defied the odds. Merchants sold shirts emblazoned with Jack's face and the tagline, "One punch, one kill," a slogan that had long since taken on a life of its own. Social media feeds flooded with fan theories about his unpredictable genius combat style, most of which consisted of wildly exaggerated interpretations of his accidental victories. But the closer Jack got to the final match, the heavier the weight on his shoulders became. He sat in his dressing room, an upgrade from the tiny prep chamber he'd started with, staring at his reflection. The gaudy tornado-branded armor sat on a stand nearby, freshly polished. The once ragged armor he'd cobbled together was now replaced with custom-fit gear that looked the part of a champion. He hated how professional it all seemed, how legitimate. Outside, the arena roared with chants, the human tornado, the joke that had become a household name. Jack looked down at his hands, trembling slightly, and closed them into fists. He was out of luck, out of stumbles to trip over, and out of excuses. This time, he wasn't just facing a tough opponent. He was facing the opponent, the undefeated champion of the arena, a Daharthan Psi warrior known only as Luxor. The Daharthan were legendary for their telepathic abilities. They didn't need physical weapons. Their minds were the battlefield. Luxor was rumored to be the strongest of them all, able to conjure constructs from pure energy, manipulate the environment with a thought, and read an opponent's intentions before they even moved. Jack had watched recordings of Luxor's previous matches. None of them had lasted more than a minute. The fight was introduced with all the pomp the arena could muster. Blazing holograms lit up the stands, showering the crowd in beams of light. The announcer's voice boomed across the galaxy. The undefeated master of the mind, the wielder of cosmic energy, Luxor the immortal, faces the unstoppable storm of chance, the galaxy's biggest underdog, the human tornado, who will emerge as the ultimate champion. When Jack stepped into the arena, the noise was deafening. Banners with his face stretched across sections of the stands. Fans screamed his name. Somewhere high above, his best friends from New Chicago were watching. The whole galaxy, it seemed, believed in him. Luxor was already on the battlefield, floating slightly above the ground. Their bodies shimmered with an otherworldly glow, and their translucent features made them look less like a being of flesh and blood, and more like a living constellation. Jack felt his stomach drop. This wasn't a brute or a speedster. This was something entirely different, something terrifying. As the gong sounded, Luxor raised one hand, and the battlefield shifted. The ground rippled, and crystalline walls erupted from the arena floor, forming an intricate maze. Jack stumbled backward, his instincts screaming at him to run. Luxor's voice echoed, not through the air, but directly into Jack's mind. "Human tornado," the voice said, smooth and resonant. "Do you truly think your luck will save you now?" Jack laughed nervously, raising his baton. "Luck? No, this is all skill. Didn't you see my highlight reel?" Luxor didn't reply, but the walls of the maze began to close in. Jack ducked and dodged, moving on pure adrenaline. He wasn't sure where to go. Everything felt like a trap. Luxor's psychic constructs materialized from thin air, glowing shards that shot toward him like guided missiles. Jack leapt behind a fragment of crystal, just barely avoiding the assault. His heart raced. He needed to do something, anything, to change the flow of the fight. "Hey, Luxor," he called out, his voice cracking. "What's it like being undefeated? Must get boring winning all the time." The shards paused mid-air, hovering. Luxor's voice returned. "Boredom? You think this is about entertainment?" "Well," Jack said, scrambling to his feet. "I mean, people are watching, right? You don't want to put them to sleep. Maybe throw in a joke or two? Knock knock?" There was no reply, but the pause was enough. Jack spotted an opening. One of the crystalline walls had shifted just enough to leave a gap. He sprinted through it, barely avoiding another barrage of shards. He didn't know where he was going, but he kept moving, kept talking. "What's the deal with psychic constructs anyway?" he yelled, skidding around a corner. "I mean, do you have to think about them all the time, or do you just, leave them on autopilot?" Luxor's voice grew sharper. "Your distractions will not save you, human." "Distractions? Oh, you've got me all wrong," Jack said, panting. "I'm just naturally annoying." As he spoke, he grabbed a loose shard from the ground, one of Luxor's earlier creations that had embedded itself in the arena floor. It was jagged and faintly glowing. Without thinking, Jack hurled it toward Luxor. He didn't expect it to hit. He just needed to keep Luxor off balance. The shard flew straight into Luxor's outstretched hand. For a moment, the psychic warrior froze. The crowd held its breath. And then, improbably, Luxor's shimmering form flickered. The psychic constructs around them wavered, as if their concentration had been broken. Jack didn't understand what had just happened. Maybe the shard disrupted their energy flow. Maybe it was a 1-in-a-million fluke. But he knew he couldn't waste the moment. With a yell, he charged forward, swinging his baton wildly. He didn't think. He didn't plan. He just moved. Luxor raised a hand to retaliate, but their form flickered again. Their construct shattered. The crowd erupted into cheers, screams, chaos. And then, in a final desperate swing, Jack landed a solid hit. Luxor collapsed, their light dimming. The silence was deafening. Jack stood there panting, bruised, and completely bewildered. He couldn't believe it. He'd won. Again. When the announcer's voice finally broke the silence, it was jubilant. "Ladies and gentlemen, the impossible has happened. The human tornado is your new champion." The stadium exploded into applause. Fans flooded the stands, chanting his name. Jack, still in a daze, raised his baton into the air and forced a grin. It was over. He was a legend now, whether he liked it or not. Later, as he sat in the champion's quarters, away from the noise and the cameras, Jack looked at his reflection once more. He didn't feel like a champion. He didn't feel like a legend. But, for the first time, he started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he was something more than a joke.